It being 6:05 and a quorum being present, we call the meeting to order. And let's call the roll. Beginning right to left. David Wanger here. Kristen Piper. Lauren.
I am here. Sorry, it's a two-step unmute process, so it takes a second.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Here.
Kristen Kasner, Rosie Kennedy,
Jack Lawrence is here.
and
Lauren Lynch, present.
we get
I
David.
got Lauren.
Okay.
Didn't I get
Did
you?
you have David too?
I didn't hear it, but I think it may have been while Kristen was unmuting. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Patrick is with us.
And Caroline
And
and Eric.
Eric Helson are present. From Weston and Sampson. And RGB. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that's our. Okay, so let's just get the housekeeping out of the way first and foremost. I think we need to do a vote on treasurer. There's a motion on the table for David Wanger to be appointed as treasurer. We talked about job descriptions.
So Kristen Piper has a job, I think had the job descriptions he sent, which David had a small change. I don't know if David, if you have that and you want to read that.
I do. The change I had suggested was the first bullet point where Kristen's initial draft said assisting the director of planning. And given my personality, I would prefer collaborating with.
So moved.
And okay, and I have one addition that I thought would be helpful. In addition to those bulleted points, I think it might be helpful if we put a little more broad language in there. As such, any other duties as may be assigned by the committee from time to time.
Well, I have no objection to that so long as there's a condition that the additions are acceptable to me.
You're part of the committee.
Yeah, but he's
I
only.
am one vote. I am one vote.
Okay. Any other duties as may be assigned by the committee from time to time and acceptable to David,
For the treasurer.
the treasurer?
The treasurer.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you. Thanks, President.
Okay, of course. So I second.
Second, the meeting is amended. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That
Aye.
was the amendment. Let's now I need to have a motion to accept David for the amended job description as treasurer.
I'll make a motion that we accept David Wanger as treasurer of the Hamilton Master Plan Steering Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Unanimous? Unanimous.
I abstain.
Oh,
No.
Difficult. Okay, great. It's unanimous.
Lauren?
Yes, I.
Yes. Kirsten? Affirmative, yes. Okay, good. That's affirmative. It's unanimous.
Aye.
Aye, good, aye.
Okay.
All right. At this point, I will yield the floor to Carolyn for an update on plan development.
Yeah, so with your packet, I hope everybody got it.
I apologize. Just one other housekeeping matter. At least when Carolyn is not here with the recording mechanism, have we discussed the minutes, the issue of who's going to take minutes?
I think Carolyn was originally planning to take minutes.
When she's here.
When she's here.
So I'm raising the question when Carolyn is not present.
So to do that, we have discussed whether or not a clerk would do that. provide because when Carolyn is not here, are we assured that we will have a recording of the meetings by the person who occupies that closet back there?
I'm not sure.
Well, if it's on Zoom, we sure would.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would.
From my experience is it's recorded somehow, and then the town provides essentially stenographic resource, converting that taped version to paper.
Mary Alice usually does that for us, for the select board.
Yes.
Patrick, were you going to discuss that with Joe?
I did mention it. I guess. Well, I think we ought to push back.
Did you push back the pushback?
Could I just ask that everyone in the room just speak into the microphones? I can hear Jack and I can hear David really well, but I can't hear Patrick and I couldn't hear Caroline.
We don't have microphones.
Then however Jack and David are doing, I can hear them super well.
That is naturally loud.
Oh, they're not working because we're talking to your computer.
Yeah. Computer.
So
Got it.
Talk really loudly.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
can you hear us now?
I can hear you, Rosie. Yeah.
So
we'll need to speak louder.
Sorry.
meeting, Kristen mentioned if there was a way, like it wasn't one single person, just so it wasn't one person, but maybe round robin a little bit. That's what Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you brought that up at the last meeting.
Also, I mean, Sydney,
Yeah, I did, since it seems, not a terribly involved task, it seemed like maybe something we could just take turns, doing so that it doesn't fall too heavily on one person.
So we can figure that out. I
Should
mean,
we start that and then see if it works out and maybe just do it, I don't know, alphabetically?
Alphabetical, yeah.
A volunteer for this meeting?
no,
We have,
I'm there, sure.
it's only when we don't have Carol.
I
So
don't want to prolong the discussion given the time and temperature, but I think for the town to be dismissive in terms of investing in the work of this committee is a bad platform on which to proceed. Other town committees and boards are provided with that transcribing method I mentioned.
Well, I think, David, I think the issue is that it was originally intended that Caroline would take the minutes, right? Didn't you tell us? Right, so I don't know if maybe somebody in your staff, maybe Sydney could just,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
okay, so
Sydney,
that's-
if it's recorded, she can certainly take
Okay.
some minutes. And by minutes, I don't mean stenographic.
all
I
right,
mean,
just
like,
summary.
something that you
Yeah.
can go under the law.
Yeah. So that might solve the problem, David.
these items were discussed, these were the votes.
Yeah. so that's the whole point of
Right,
the-
exactly, yeah.
All right, folks, I just don't understand why we're not willing to be assertive in terms of treating this committee as
We will be, David. I spoke to Joe. I left a message, asked him to please call me back so we could discuss issues like this. And unfortunately, he did not call me back, and I've been absorbed in the last few weeks. So
But
I'll
again,
undertake prior to the next meeting, I will go and discuss this with Joe.
but again, Caroline had said that was part of what was in her contract. So if she's going to have Sydney do the minutes from a recording, then,
Yeah, but who's going to provide the recording?
well, we record it every.
No, I
every
understand
week.
this meeting, we're doing it, but we won't have that
One
capability.
thing. Sydney, was your undertaking to transcribe from a recording part of the contract?
No.
I didn't think so.
So I think this is, I mean, I'm going to make a statement, but table, because I don't want to necessarily discuss it, but I think there's a broader issue that's been a consistent theme that I've been hearing from you guys of just kind of, who are we, who is the consultant, and how is the town involved with all three of us? And maybe that's a topic for not this meeting, because we have the consultants here
Yeah.
right now and want to make sure we hear as much from you guys as possible.
Yeah.
But I think that's a theme that I haven't quite resolved and understood in my own mind.
So it will be resolved prior to the next meeting. I will undertake take that responsibility myself.
Thank you.
and speak to Joe, because we should have that capability within our substance here, lest anything happens. Shouldn't, God forbid, runs into a tree or something on the way up here.
Well, she's in Alaska. Who knows?
No.
Is she?
Yeah, but we didn't. That's just for us.
But we would expect to have somebody at all the other meetings, Patrick? Okay, thank you.
Well, I
So
think
that's a good solution. And we'll have official recordings of all of
Great.
this.
Okay.
So I was going to PowerPoint. You do have printed copies in front of you. It was just to guide the discussion. And I was just going to go over our July activities, which on our end, on the consulting end, this is our data gathering mode. It's kind of when we hunker down and we go quiet, quite honestly. Getting our GIS.
Hey, Carolyn.
Can you hear me?
Sorry to interrupt. It is impossible to hear
Yeah.
you. Do you mind just using a microphone when you're talking instead of the computer?
There are
Well,
no
they're
microphones.
not working. They're not connected to anything.
So for those of you
That's
on-
much better though. Yeah. Right
Okay,
now.
I just
Yeah,
turned the
whoever-
laptop toward me.
Yep.
Okay.
Same.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, nothing was connected. And it's one of those crazy meetings during COVID, what can we say? Yes, it's warm. I didn't want to say it, but it's quite warm in here. You're lucky to be at home. So what I was saying was that right now in the beginning of most master planning processes, committees are often finding their own, as you can see, they're trying to gel, they're trying to find their own space. On the consulting side, what we're doing is data gathering. That's what Eric is doing. That's what my group is doing. We've put together the land use maps that we have handed out. I sent them to you. I do have printed copies. If you want, you can send me your address and I'll drop them in the mail to you. Or leave them with Patrick and you can pick them up, one or the other. So we're trying to get our mapping in order because that tells us a lot. Getting the data background so that we understand the existing conditions of Hamilton right now for each of the potential chapters. And what I want to talk about mostly tonight is community engagement, because we have a number of activities to set forth in a calendar and such. So that'll be the rest of the agenda. But in terms of recapping the July meeting, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I have put in the memorandum where we are in the process. This was going to be on my slides. So here we are at the very beginning of the process, right? We're in August, we're in the first 25% of the process. And we actually got a somewhat later start than this schedule shows. So we're going to be in data gathering mode for a couple of months, at least, before we really dive deep into the chapters. But September, October, November are going to be critical periods for community engagement and stakeholder engagement, so that when we get our data and we get our community engagement, we can actually sit down and do the work of melding those things together and thinking about a vision and actions and goals. So I'm showing you right here, kind of what we also want to do is outlook for our business in the next month. So we're going to be launching community engagement. That's actually what we had said that we wanted to do anyway, is to launch the community engagement and the overall planning process in September. So we need to gear up for that. And then we are going to actually start converting some of that data to written chapters in the next month and a half. So that being said, if you see, I've also put our budget. This is actually just the last month invoicing, which isn't completely accurate because we actually started working before we had a contract. So what we do is we take that time and we bill it forward later on. So next billing, it'll jump up quite a bit higher. But essentially you have 89% budget on this, which is about 10% of the project. And you can see how that breaks down. This one, I did amend this from the one that I sent you, and that the one I sent you split out the housing chapter for some reason. And then all the master plan chapters should be together, and they represent about 67,000-ish of the total budget. So are there any questions on that bit? Okay, good.
At this point, Carolyn, you and I have had a couple of discussions about the invoices.
Mm.
And the representative will be supplying to the committee copies.
Yeah,
I've yet to receive any. I don't know if anyone else has.
yeah. Well, I can email it. I mean, if you want to see
As
that.
long as we get on track
Yeah,
going forward.
yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. It won't, I don't think it's going to say as much as you think it says. This graph actually says a lot more about where you are in terms of budget you've spent and budget you have to go, and many potential opportunities to move things around.
Will this graph be updated on?
Yes.
I will be supplied also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Copies to us.
And so that was just sort of my July recap. I don't want to take too much time with it. So we can move on to the business of this particular meeting. In terms of community engagement materials, we've put together a number of community. Can you still hear me if I turn that way?
Yep.
Okay, good. Number one, I'm thinking about is some of the things that the committee has asked for. Like, I know that you want to do some outreach into the community to particular constituencies that you know. And to that end, we've developed some talking points. And we've also developed a mock-up of some website cards so that when you go to that meeting, you can hand out the cards and people can log on to the website, which I'll have printed up through like Vistaprint, like business cards that you can just hand out. Did anybody have a chance to review the talking points? I did bring them here. I thought I did. Yes. And if you just want to, if there's something that you feel is missing or that you would like to see, you just know that when you go into a community meeting and you have to talk about this, somebody's going to ask you about it. So you want to have an answer for it.
Commercial development.
Yeah, here you
go.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So essentially, we would keep it at a very high level. What is a master plan? What is the committee's intent, or what is the committee's service here? How will it direct land uses? How will it evolve goals and objectives? So we have a kind of, here's what it can do. And we stop short of here's what it can't do, because we want to tread carefully on what we're putting out there. But essentially, what people need to know is that a master plan works at a very high level and it guides other policies and regulations. So that's the most important thing. And that most things should tie back to your master plan. Decision-making at the town level should tie back to your master plan. So it is the guidepost.
The first sentence talks about the master plan directs development. And maybe that is
right.
a problem.
Guides.
Yes, thank you.
I just feel like they're good talking points, but they're, I don't know about you guys, but like in the age of COVID, I feel like people literally stop listening and like the minute they start to get a little confused. So I've been really trying to like not bring it down to be condescending, but just
right.
be just, you know, simple, a little bit more. And I don't know, is there a way even if to have this and then like kind of bullet points that just get at the end of it, like why it matters to you? Kind of,
Why it
you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
you should listen, like, this is important.
Yeah.
I don't know, just something like that.
I mean, yeah, or we could say, here's 5 things you need to know about Hamilton's master plan. Like, you know, take it and run.
I mean, you want people to be like, okay. Oh, it's not like, I don't know.
Yeah, you just talked government at me. Yeah, I know. Okay, well, we can probably try and bring it home a little bit more for another iteration. We've got time.
I just want to.
Okay,
Yeah, because Kristen is like, to your point, like this feels like it's useful for us internally as background context, but in terms of then actually recommunicating that externally, the simplification and like consolidation would be better.
I think so. I mean, if it's this.
I
is the-
agree.
For the community engagement and then hand out the card to
Mhm.
like, here, find out more. I don't feel like I've drawn people in enough.
Yeah.
It's kind of more higher level, that's all.
So my question might be the opposite, which is you go on higher and I'm coming. And I've sort of been sort of waiting to sort of, but to be honest, as a, I don't know how much experience you've had with regional school committees in terms of doing a master plan or regional school districts. But even I've been sitting here, it is complicated how much the Hamilton master plan can relate to or how much it can, what was the word we want to guide the schools, right? It's a very different thing than a town in which you're not regionalized, right?
right.
So I guess I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but it's something I can imagine in terms of talking points. Like if you're talking to parents of, if you're talking to parents of school age kids about Hamilton, they're going to want to know about the school specifically. That's going to want to be, and so, and I'm not sure that I would know exactly how to answer how much or how little.
Well,
master
I
plan.
think
How
that what their concerns would be, and then I think it's the talking points that would need to be addressed. I mean, I'm not working regional school. I mean, I've been a planner in town with a regional school system, but I just don't. I didn't foresee that as
Caroline, could you turn the computer back towards you? Thanks.
but
you don't think that is being
well, I in that particular town, I mean, every town's different, but that it was not, I didn't foresee talking points having to deal specifically with the regional school system, but you see things I don't see. So yeah. Okay. Right. Oh, okay. Okay.
Right.
And I think, and I don't think you're disagreeing with anything I'm saying, about just kind of making it simpler, but I think it's an added question. It is a key question, especially in Hamilton, because it's like, everyone's like, we're broke because the schools are so expensive and how are we gonna pay for our schools? So, and then,
And yet we as a town can't make all of those.
right, we can't, we're not on an island, yeah. But, and I think in the fiscal impact analysis, and I mean, it affects the schools. What happens at the schools affects everything, and everything affects the schools a little bit. So it's kind of like, I think it's the balancing act that somehow, how can we create a talking point around that?
It's going to be really more complicated too, because of the fact that even as the schools have been this present year as 66% of our operating budget, when you've got a capital plan put together, which we had a zero capital requirement this year, that percentage is going to go to a very different place. And we're already looking at significant overrides. And an override is never a slam dunk. So that talking point is going to become extremely important.
Right, and I just.
It's a hellacious tricky talk.
We would all be talking about that in this town. I mean, this is a very, I imagine, that would be
There is. Right.
But I think this is a good framework of what's the question, what it can do and what we can't do. We're regional, we have
Right.
control over this much. There is a piece we don't have control over, but we hope to work regionally as a whole.
So, yeah, in the future. Yeah, but like, so, and it may not be that we don't need to national or for a large chunk of the population, we talk about.
It's the elephant in the room, and the point is that Wenham has a higher cost per capita than we do. And they are at a higher tax level than we are already. And we're all crowding up against that $25 limit per 1,000. And we've got we have two things that we've got to be looking at in the course of. Erica's not going to get down into the weeds. We've got people who are getting down into the weeds, but we've got to bring all this together. And the point is here, with a series of overrides every year for the next however many years, we're going to hit the wall. So we've got to look at cost and we have to look at revenue. And residential growth is not going to get us the kind of money that we need in order to bring this thing back into balance. So we have really a sticky problem here. And we really can't produce a talking point at this point because
No.
we've got too many unknowns.
Right.
No, I'm just.
Well, I think
summarize the
Kristen said it
situation.
though. This is what we cannot do. I mean, and we can't address regional issues through the master plan. You can only talk about what Hamilton can do. And it becomes an invitation to those people who have concerns to participate. We need to hear what their concerns are. And so you just gotta try and take your talking points to the degree that they are valuable now and try and leverage that into getting people to participate in the process.
Well, we are getting Wenham's participation in the planning that we're doing with the financial planning that we're doing within the town. And one of the things, let me just say parenthetically here, you got a list from Rick of sort of influential people, and it was all the people who are on different boards and so forth in town. The one that was left out is probably the most critical, and that was the FinCon. And they're very important, along with the CapCon, who's less important, but because anyway, the point is that we've got to wrestle all this to the ground here pretty quick. And I know that our people are doing that so that we can then have something that we can undertake with Eric and work with. And at that point, we can start to produce some meaningful talking points, because the last thing we want to do is have talking points that misrepresent the situation.
Right.
Well, and also one of the problems is it's a very quickly polarizing issue. And I'm wondering if when you talk about talking points that include education in general, maybe something that doesn't, maybe you can work magic and come up with some questions that won't trigger the polarization, right? That will just garner information. And at the same time, be instilling in people the fact that we don't have an unlimited pocketbook to be able to give you this and this. So I would say the less we can do specific questions, the less likely we are to have disharmony. And we're just thinking about Hamilton. Where is Hamilton going and how do we get there? So if we think about the issues more of just a broad financial, how can we pay for the things that we need? Maybe to sort of just avoid specific talk about the schools or any specific entity, but just talk about it broadly.
I think it's important. I agree with you, but I think it's important for us to be aware that there are going to be things that are on people's minds. And I agree with Dana, especially when we reach out to people with school-age kids, that's like the moment they get involved because of schools. And can we tell a bigger story?
But right, that's what I'm saying. A bigger story in the sense that gear the conversation more toward finances and more toward tax base, and instead of having it go to the same issues that are critical to a portion of the people in town, but are not critical to another portion of the people in town.
We want to avoid the rabbit holes.
Exactly.
might not even be talking about questions later or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, that, and he can help us with this, but that like the talking points and all, it need to be gearing us towards positive.
A better
collaborative-
Hamilton in
Yeah,
general. for
right.
everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
right,
it.
exactly.
I mean, we need to truly
That's
bring
right.
up Bloom and saying, "Oh, we're gonna figure it out."
Right,
You know,
yeah,
like,
no, right.
you know, so.
Let's
Can I
hope.
get a?
Sorry.
My counterpart in Wyndham, Margaret Hoffman, she tells me they're starting on their master planning process. And she asked me to ask the group to be thinking about intersections of information where we'd like to connect with them. It may be good for us to have a joint meeting at some point.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
and perhaps liaison function between the two groups.
Because we already have the liaison with FinCom, right?
From, with women,
With one of them.
not technically, but certainly finally when we can, it's difficult. And we're certainly mindful of the interaction. But we don't have a formal services yet.
But it's heading in that direction.
But I would think so. It's inevitable, I think, for the front.
Can I ask Carolyn, no, I'm sorry, can I ask a question? Do you, to what Patrick just said, already have what he just described on your radar as part of this is, look, is it, what, amongst all the many things you have, where are the intersections with what? Because that is certainly not the only one.
Right.
Recreation is certainly.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing for the committee and also even Patrick and the town manager to talk about, because I had actually brought it up to the town manager that it really, at his level, it's more appropriate for him to facilitate joint discussions. And I just came here from Margaret's office, so, and she was asking me about, your process. And I think that Wenham is looking to you to, to kind of see how you're doing. Given how many. No. They're still figuring it out. Yeah. But where was I going with that? Oh, so there are particular touch points though that you have with Wenham, but I would say with any master plan process, not just Wenham, but anybody else that you share regional resources with, you want to have a conversation with them. If not a couple of conversations. And so understanding obviously schools and other regional issues might be one. Potentially shared development projects, maybe, the MBTA requirement for transportation oriented development might be something that you might want to think about since you share a transit station. There, affordable housing, there's any number of subjects where you and Wenham might work better together.
They're about to go over the top in affordable housing. We're at 3%.
Yeah,
So we have a desperate situation here.
yeah.
Rosie doesn't totally agree with me, and I understand Rosie's point is a very important point. But these are things that we're going to have to work through as we go along here. We can't dust them under the rug.
Right.
And there are ways of getting at this, which I think are going to need to be pushed much more aggressively by us
Mhm.
than we are right now.
I think it would be helpful. FinCom, from time to time, tries to take the initiative to engage with Wenham. And one member of FinCom said at some point, the towns ought to merge, which would evaporate some of these artificial.
I don't know if we're gonna
No.
solve that in the master
No.
plan.
No, but
I appreciate it.
there are steps along the way. Fire department merger has been studied in the past and ought to be considered again. And so too with police and maybe DPW. I think it's inevitable that these considerations have to be.
Well, in the
Something
economic
like-
development portion, I assume you guys are looking a little bit at regionalization of things. I
We,
mean, not solving every problem, but just looking at, like.
Interviews with the department heads.
Yeah.
They're looking at- We're doing midway. Police at a joint public services or public emergency services building, but then I talked about regional more to try to
Yeah.
get dispatching systems up to where, at least in my experience, we look.
Yeah,
Our
so,
dispatching service worked with Wenham for many years, and then this thing came along in Middleton. And they jumped into it, we didn't, and we took on the whole banana ourselves, which cost us an extra, what, 150,000 a year or something like that, which is insane. I think they're quite unhappy. There's a lot of possibilities along those lines. We have crept up to this thing numerous times.
This is really a political issue.
Yeah.
There are perceptions about being very proprietary about one's geography.
Right.
But economic pressures, I hope, will suppress that parochialism.
Yeah, well, we had an offline conversation and we don't know the data yet, and you know better than I do. But because of the pressing issue of taxes and rising costs and such, in the master plan process, you're not going to find one solution, right? And you're going to have little bites of many different apples, right? That have many different opportunities, and they probably won't be solved in the master plan. They're probably just going to point you to the direction of additional research and study that needs to be done. But at least the master plan captures all of those ideas and points you in a direction.
It might provide guidance.
Right, exactly. That's the hope. It gives you more information to stand on and more direction and a better sense of what the community will want.
I
But
see this process as putting pressure on us to deal with these situations, which we have continually pushed down the road. And if we don't take advantage of this period of time, and I don't know whether that's something, how that's gonna run out, because you have one job that is spelled out in a contract. We have difficulties that go beyond that in scope. And so it would be helpful, of course, if you were also guiding their master plan process.
You
but
tell them
that's
that.
Not something that I can necessarily dictate. But I think we need to take advantage of this pressure that's on us right now.
Yeah.
And use it to best advantage to try and wrestle all this stuff.
so let's listen to Carolyn, and we're gonna tell all the public.
yeah, because it is in our scope to help clarify your issues and at least give you some structure and direction for how you carry this forward. So I'll take another stab at the talking points and send that out. I think we can probably edit this via email and then call it a day. Like by the time you guys are ready to launch, hopefully this will be done. And of course we can amend it as we go too.
Last week, the fall festival, the downtown people came and I told them about, we would like to have a table there. And so maybe we can aim to have a flyer or some material that we could give out to people.
Well, I think too, as we go through this, it would be really helpful if you guys selected internally, like a few champions for some of these things, because I think a table would be great. I think flyers would be great, but to really draw people in, let's think about really doing up a table, like getting people in, so that it would be helpful if I had a couple of you, maybe, to work with.
About that. We would be there, and we're there now.
But I mean, we can help you. We can bring posters and
flyers
and pictures and. Right.
We don't have to have everything done, but at least save the date.
Yeah. And I think, I'm hoping we can really get that process nailed down. But I think a table at an event like that, the more we can make that attractive. Okay.
We need a cake.
Okay. That'll bring people in.
How was that biggest campaign?
Scotch.
Hot toddies.
That's something to think about if we think about firming up.
Yes.
And a target date.
Yes, the target date is really important for us because we have to get people aligned to make things.
Just a procedural question. When we send this around for our editing suggestions, do we Patrick, do we get that to you as we discussed earlier?
Yes, please.
Right. Okay.
Yes, I don't, if you guys caught that, but edits should run through Patrick on documents.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
And CC, if you would. Kristen and
Hey,
I.
Carolyn, could I? Oh,
Yes.
sorry. I was trying to jump in. I don't mean to go back to the previous conversation, but I think you could just say yes or no. I don't think we have to get into it, but given the previous conversation, I'm just wondering if there can be either within each section or an entire section itself where we have, I'll call them recommendations, but I mean it looser than that, to like further study something like regionalization or consolidation and encourage, the town to eventually make a decision. So, we can provide an outline of the problem, the challenges, the pros, the cons, but basically say like, we can't solve this within this plan
Yeah,
itself because
that's
it's
what you
about
would-
Hamilton.
That's what you would do in a master plan, and it probably would,
Okay.
it wouldn't be, I recommend not making anything in your master plan fuzzy, and if it's something you're interested in doing, make it an action, and that way, it gets a budget tied to it. Otherwise, if there's too much text and not enough action, then things get lost in the mix. So,
Yeah, I guess I just,
yeah.
Again, like the comment about the consolidating the fire departments, and I'm sure we could have a similar conversation about the police departments. That's not something we are going to be able to make a decision about, I don't think, in this plan. So it would be fuzzy, but maybe we can have a fuzzy section.
Well, I don't recommend fuzzy sections, but I think what you would do is have an action that says something to the degree of assign such and such committee to create a study of a regionalized fire department. And you could name a person who's in charge of it, whether that be a staff person or a committee person. Usually you have a person assigned to lead that effort. Sometimes you'll have a budget, like it could be like a $1 sign versus $2 signs, just so that they have an estimate of what kind of costs they're looking at. And then a time frame for getting it done. That's in an action plan. You just really want those three things, or it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah,
Even if you have those three
that
things,
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. Okay, that's helpful.
No, I might be getting ahead of myself.
I just wanted to say at this juncture, this may be fanciful, but especially since the vendor for Wenham is unknown, but were it to be you, your organization, can you, within proper ethical or other standards, sort of begin to have joint consideration? I'm trying to find some various foundations for moving us forward in this.
Well, I think you have an interest in regionalization, whoever your consultant is, that's Hamilton's interest, is to have a regionalized conversation. And to the degree that I can facilitate that in this role, I will. I'm not sure I want to speak to that other role. Yeah. Well.
What I think is important to find the intersection points, put those as questions, and then pose it to a joint group.
Yeah.
When a master plan, Hamilton master plan, to then discuss, because you guys can't, it's just, these are opportunities for conversation, so go.
Yeah, I can help facilitate the conversation. I have no problem doing that.
One of the interesting points is that the state DOR got very excited at one point about the two towns looking in this direction, and did a whole study gratis for us. And I need to go find that. It's somewhere in.
You can find that. Would be great to look at.
Have you? You're gonna have a better chance than I have.
Do you have it electronically?
You know what?
I have a scanner. If you
The 2009 study that you talked about? I have a copy of that.
Okay, I want to let you, there's a couple things I wanted to say, but I want to let you get through this.
No, go ahead and say it, because I'm going to move us on to
Well,
the next bit.
move us on, because I think it's on a different topic.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what I wanted is just, we touched on the talking points. We'll continue to amend those. I sent out a flyer. I did get an edit or two back. And that flyer is just really baseline. Like when you have, if you have an event at the fall meeting, and let's have a conversation. Are there little knickknacks that you think people might, we can do that. I mean, we can make little Hamilton master plan, whatever you think might interest people. I don't know what. Anything to get them to the table, whether it be toys. We just need the lead time to be able to produce that. Just think about what might appeal to people and get them in. If there isn't anything, that's fine too. But this is the time to, we've got a few weeks so we can actually get some balls rolling. And balls could be a good. Yeah, there you go. I don't know if that's,
Wait, we're thinking September is the timeline?
for the fall event.
Yeah, I'm just
yeah.
thinking like little cups with hot apple cider or something.
And that could be good. Also, if it could be local, that would be nice. If
Yeah.
you could think of a Hamilton business that produces
Yeah.
kind of interest, that would be a great way to support. Just think about it.
Partnering with like Tender Crop or something.
Yeah, she was saying maybe, could we use it to do hot cider or something like that, just to bring people into the table.
And I am a food serve safe person.
There you go.
Serve safe person for Hamilton. So yes, it's a great idea to do that. And cider donuts, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool. So again, if you think about other things that we need to produce on the Weston and Sampson side that you need, that you think will be helpful, just, let me know with enough lead time. Yeah.
Well, just like, I think it's good to have some mapping. I don't know, I know kids like to put where they live on.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all can. I'm just saying, it's a good way to introduce, like, this is a map, you're on it.
Yeah.
Somebody will come along and say, hey, I live on the next street from you. Hello, neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think these maps, if you can, if we can work a little bit, and I know maybe this is the plan to work on some of the definitions.
Yes.
As I say, you've got bridle trails on here that don't exist as roads.
Yeah. So if you could take a Sharpie and start marking that out, we can start fixing the maps. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you send this to us?
Yeah, I did send it to you in PDF already, but if you want, I could send it again. I can also print them out map big size if you need that. Just let me know. It's
As long
just
as it doesn't print. You've got it on the screen, you've got it. But if you don't have it, none of this stuff prints on the bottom of what.
Oh, really?
Did you want to say anything?
It comes out looking like that.
Oh.
Which has better
It's all
definition, but
engagement.
we don't have any of the legend down
Yeah.
below. It's on the screen.
Did we talk, and forgive me if you already talked about Patrick or others, is there a way we can have a central repository? Do we have that already?
That's a good question. No, we don't have that yet. We can do a Google Drive. What is the best way of sharing information?
We're building that website, right?
Yeah, we do have a social pinpoint
building a
website we're
website.
building, and we can also put that part of that as private, and you can have like a password accessible. This will all be public, but well, everything we're doing is public, but I'm just saying. Okay,
If that's something you can think about.
sure.
Google
I
Drive,
didn't.
The central place to store maps
Yeah.
and documents, like either on a
Yeah.
Google Drive. I mean, we will
Yeah.
have it on social pinpoint, but if
Yeah.
you have a Google Drive and you have it loaded up, you can see things pretty quickly.
I think Google Drive would be great, just so that also with the collaborative editing of documents, we could do that in a much more streamlined way.
Okay, I like it. Okay, good. Sorry, I just need to fan myself.
There will be people in town who will go to that site if everything is there.
Yeah,
So
well, we
don't
wanted
wanna-
everything
We
there.
don't want to limit the access to that site.
Yeah, I can imagine why you would, but and the idea is that we do load just about everything that we can think of onto that site. It
That's
is,
important.
yeah.
But we'll have stuff in drafts. On that site, under password protection and drafts.
Up to you.
I don't care either way.
Okay,
We'll
well,
have a draft
let's,
section with that and see which direction it's going
Can I
to go.
offer another suggestion, just as a suggestion? I don't know, do people use Dropbox at all?
Yeah, I love Dropbox.
I have a Dropbox
I,
too.
I, I like Dropbox. I have
Okay.
it's pretty organized because
It is,
every
yeah.
time you put something in, it will go to that file because sometimes on Google Docs.
Uh-huh.
And this just might be my inability to manage it, but it goes sort of everywhere versus in
Yeah.
Dropbox, it goes to one central file.
Yeah, I
So-
tell people-
I would second that. Yeah, I do actually have a much
Yeah, where-
stronger
so
preference for Dropbox.
you willing to look at Dropbox?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we use that for the town hall.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Okay. Then I vote for a Dropbox.
Okay,
Okay.
no problem.
Lauren, you okay with that?
I strongly prefer Dropbox over Google Drive as well.
Okay, perfect.
What is it?
Just that I'll come over to your house and set you up. with it.
Yeah,
I'm serious,
it's
yeah.
free.
Yeah,
it's
and
free.
it's so easy, like it'll be counted master plan or some.
Right.
And everything that will go into one single file so that we'll be able to search and locate everything. And maybe they could be put in by date or something.
I think I would suggest, yeah, when we send it out, maybe like when you make edits or something, start it with a date so it's sortable and end it with your initials. And that way we can know who last touched it. And
David, I will, honestly, I'll come over to your house this weekend. And I'll set you up.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. And then the last bit on that, it was, I've got quite a few contacts for the stakeholder list. And I wanted to send you just a mock-up of what it looks like, but it's basically an Excel file with names and people's affiliations and their contacts. Even if you don't have somebody's contacts, but you think that somebody we need to talk to, just send me a name and I'll either bug Patrick or I'll actually send it to Patrick and then he'll send it to me. But we want to compile a pretty comprehensive stakeholder list. That way we can put people in order. And Eric and I, as we need to, will talk to these
And
people.
that's the kind of list that would be terrific as it populates to see it, so we're not like thinking of the same person.
Right,
So
right,
that would
right.
be
Well, I
great.
can keep that in the Dropbox and you can take a look at it.
What kind of people do you want?
Well, the obvious people that we already have are people who are board affiliated, town staff, that kind of stuff we've already got. But people in the community, either with institutional knowledge, right? Or
Someone in jail.
yes, people who are maybe business leaders or school affiliated people that we should talk to.
Guidance.
I think business leaders are pretty universally not allowed down, unfortunately.
Well, they can help inform us of a lot of things. So, and you'd be surprised what people who own businesses know and observe.
Oh,
And they
downtown.
can be, yeah. And on our part, it might be a 10 to 15-minute conversation. It's not a big deal, but you can get a lot of good information from people. Yeah. Precisely. Those are the things that committees are really valuable in knowing. People who know the history of the town, who live here forever, or who have some sort of architectural knowledge, or really anything. I'm not promising that we'll get in touch with those people, but the more people we know of, that helps us, and it helps you going forward. Like, yeah, super basic. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's basically name, affiliation, or title, and an email address if you have it, a phone number if you have it.
I have emailed to Patrick a supplement to Rick Mitchell's initial list.
Yeah, I saw that.
But I don't have access to addresses or contact information.
That's okay. We'll find it.
Right.
It's a small town. We'll find them.
I think I omitted the Council on Aging, but I'm sure you're at that. That's a significant.
It is.
Thank you.
Did you list the Capcom by any chance, Patrick?
It was on the list, but I.
It was? Because I have all the contact people, and those are people who've been around town for a long time, do a lot of stuff. are well informed.
Carolyn, if you can send out, just the most, before you get the whole Dropbox, just that list. to
Mhm.
us
Yeah.
After this meeting. Unless you get Dropbox super fast.
I already have Dropbox. It's just a matter of creating your folder in it. Yeah.
Al Gore had a lockbox.
You just make sure we're following the order. And in terms of community engagement, I had sent out in my memo, and I don't know if we're prepared to talk about it tonight. We've talked about the fall meeting, but we really need to pin down some dates for like a workshop, a first workshop, things like that, so that we can prepare. And it's really hard to know at this point, like if we're going to be virtual on a lot of things, and we can be in person outdoors. It's hard to know going into this fall what things are going to look like. So maybe we got to plan for multiple scenarios, or hybrid scenarios. So what I'll do maybe is in the Dropbox and maybe I'll send out is some calendars so we can start populating the dates. I would say going through the spring. So, and I hope you can hear me. So that would be, we had talked about, say, for example, the Ipswich River. If they're having an event, let's put it on our calendar, and then we can make some decisions going forward about where to put time. Time that might be, for community engagement that might be useful, and then we can start planning for those particular events.
Okay.
If you're prepared to pull up your calendar, I am.
Just kind of trying to figure out and understand our process for the agendas moving forward, because at some point, I mean, we're talking a lot about kind of structure of the plan and
Right.
like procedure to go do, but there's also an element that is an education to us to then go out to the community. So
Right.
do you see that these agendas they'll be like, update on this plan, but then it's topic specific and get some like you pull data on natural resources, and then we might have a speaker at that meeting or how do you see kind of the education process of this group of your data as you're gathering it before we then kind of launch it into a public forum?
Yeah, that was going to be my next section. I just want,
it just informs, like, if that's the case, then how does that inform when we have that fall meeting, and what topics do you think? Anyway, that's
right.
kind of why.
So let's think of
Okay, so
I hope you can hear me. So in September, all we're doing at September really is building awareness in the community of what's going on. So, and it's simultaneously what you're doing is like thinking about a bit of the structure of the plan. What's the plan going to look like? That's sort of the first foray, and it doesn't require a lot of knowledge on your part yet. As we go into October, I expect us to have pretty substantial data and there will be topics that we are really going to need to think hard about. Not all of them. I mean, I don't think your historic section is going to take a lot. Feel free to disagree. Natural resources are probably going to stay the same. But when we start getting into community facilities and when we start getting into sustainability and economic development and those sort of things, that's when you as a group are going to really have to focus on the data. We will be providing you summaries, basically. This is what we've come up with in the data. And then it's a roll up your sleeve work session. Like, let's really think about what this means and the best way to approach this. I actually had on your agenda, we wanted to do educational videos for the public and we wanted to do some surveys. I don't think we're there yet, so I don't want to complicate the issue.
I don't think we're there yet, but I really appreciate you kind of saying that, because there are kind of topics that aren't that controversial. I mean, our historic resources and aspect are what they are. I think there's something, obviously something to talk about, obviously something to talk about with this building.
You're sitting in it.
But it also, but to inform, for natural resources and other things, that starts to inform then where you can put things, where we can start to think. So, and I agree with you that housing, commercial development, and what was the last? And facilities and regional, those are prickly topics. So
Right.
what can we start doing in the beginning to start getting buy-in, and that might not be as controversial, so we start getting people involved, I think is a way to think about how we line up these topics.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys know more than I do about what's prickly and what's not.
I can tell you one major topic, and that's going to be water.
Yep.
And we're looking at $9 or $10 million worth of expenditures right now for extra reservoirs and things of that nature. We have a situation where we're on restriction every summer, and not this summer because it's been a very wet summer, but we've had a number of summers when the river's gone dry. When the river goes dry, it's also the major source of water for Ipswich. So we're kind of fighting Ipswich for that. And you know, this is a big issue.
Yeah.
We do have certain rights in the north coastal area, but we can't mix the water from the two areas, I believe is one of the problems. So it gets down to something pretty interesting. There is an Ipswich River Watershed Association. It's actually located in Ipswich. I know the guy who runs it very well. One of the guys on the CapCon, David Thompson, is an engineer, and he has looked very carefully at this whole issue for the CapCon because we're trying to wrestle with this major expenditure and what we're going to do. We have pipe sizes in town that may or may not support different things. I seriously question whether or not Asbury Street has sufficient water capacity for all the development that's going on there right now. These are things that are critical because we're going to have to make some decisions here pretty quick. And DPW head Tim is going to have to be in this thing. So that's one issue that's going to be major.
Yeah.
And definitive in terms of which way we go.
Right. So and part of our task is to assess water resources and wastewater as well.
We have more
And-
waste.
Right, but you.
I mean, our wastewater all goes.
It's a constraint to development.
course
So,
it is.
so you need to understand where it might be, prudent to think of.
We've studied
community
wastewater for
packaging.
downtown on numerous occasions.
Yeah,
It's gone nowhere for obvious reasons.
yeah, but there may be potential development. I mean, if you're looking to change land uses and such, there may be, and I don't know, I'm just putting this out here as possible. I mean, there may be changes of land uses that you would consider, and then you might want to consider, a packaged wastewater system or something, to facilitate some other type of growth development, right? Those are complicated questions, and I would actually put those a little bit farther down the line than dealing with that right now. In terms of like building community awareness and creating buy-in, I personally would not start with the prickly issues.
No, that's my point.
Yeah.
What information can we get to so we can be most informed when we get
Right. So I think Weston and Sampson needs to conduct its study, which is going to take, if not a couple months. So let's think about that closer to the winter. Let's get you all really schooled in what those issues are, and then think about the best forum and the best way to get public input on that.
So are you thinking that we have a meeting sometime in October, really just to announce the master plan and kind of just overall, what is it? What's the function? And then, I mean, I think we need to at that point, we need to figure out what we need so maybe at that point we have surveys or questions.
Yeah, that's what we initially started with something blanket global survey. And as I've been reading and going through this, I don't think that that's going to be very helpful.
Not pretty.
I think that surveys feel, but maybe what we need to do is, like, for example, we started a mock video on the issue of sustainability, just because it was an easier topic. So you create a video for the public on sustainability, and then you might want to slowly weave in some of these more prickly topics, and then steer people to a very specific survey of key issues defined by the committee. So it might be 5 to 10 questions. We don't need to put people through the ringer. We just want to get their opinions on certain alternatives and options.
Yeah, and it'd be good, I mean, if we have this local day and announce
Yeah.
something that we're having. But if there's other homework pieces that we can add to the website to give to like, take a picture of your favorite places in Hamptons, we can give you guys content for the website and just maybe like, this is what we've got
Yeah.
from the public. This is their,
Well,
it could be
in
their house,
terms
it
of
could be their neighborhood. It could be
vision, you know, that's an easy start. It's just creating vision and in previous companies I've worked with master plans, just even asking people, what are the top 3 things you most love about Hamilton? There's top 3 things you don't like about it. Those, and leave it open text. People will give you some amazing feedback. And those things can be, you know, informative for the planning part, but they can also be, you know, good, like testimonials or, you know, when you put out different things, you can call out what people have said about the community.
I forgot, if I may, in the email I sent to Patrick, I think I can copy chairs.
Yeah.
Listing some additional boards and committees. I also suggested it might be good to find some way to solicit the views of town employees, because they may have insights and knowledge that might be helpful.
Well, certainly department heads will be talking.
Talking.
Yeah, but other people who are in
Employees.
the municipal realm
Yeah.
also have really good knowledge, like public works. Those people know a lot.
Yeah.
They see a lot.
So how do
And they
we,
grew up here.
right,
Yeah.
Some of them don't live here anymore because it's too expensive, but they know.
so I don't know how one would structure that kind of audience for feedback.
I think I want to talk to the town manager. I mean, that could be, like, we have, Survey Monkey is something we use for online surveys, but what we can do is to ensure that it gets to the right people is do a paper survey and then we'll collate it into a finding.
Patrick, is that on your radar?
Let me throw something out my wife hit me with.
Yeah.
We don't have a local newspaper. Our news coverage stinks. And my wife suggested that we simply write a letter that covers a lot of these things that we've been discussing here and send a copy to every household in town. Might be the cheapest money we spend.
That's what I was going to say.
We've done that before.
Have you?
You can tag a survey on the
Everybody's gonna-
Some people are not on the water system. Some people have their own
We'll
wells.
send one to them.
But I think
Had that
we
many?
have to contact, my point is, as
Yeah.
you know, is to contact every household in town and make them aware. So it's right there in front of them. I can't.
Not the water, then the tax, quarterly tax, annual.
No, that'll just make people cranky, the water bills.
The water bill's better, it's a service, yeah.
Is that quarterly?
It is quarterly, it just came out, right?
Yeah.
to
So for next
September.
quarter, that actually puts us in a good position to maybe.
Yeah, but we'll probably have this forum. So back to your question about forum, are you thinking the local at the end of September or it's a third week of September and then mid-October-ish
Yeah.
for some sort of forum?
You mean for a workshop? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
well, you're
okay.
saying fall, because I think you're saying it's like a fall workshop of introducing the master plan.
Yeah, I think, but we gotta work hard. I think the September thing is more of a fun thing to get people aware. We can certainly get the social pinpoint to a point where people can see it. You're welcome to do your community outreach where you feel comfortable enough to do it at this point, because you really don't have a lot of data to go on. But I don't think it's a good idea for committee members to get out there too much and do more than raise awareness and steer people to
Well, not
regular forums.
Yeah.
So yeah, October for a big workshop would be great. If we could land that on a calendar really soon, I think it would give us a good deadline to build toward.
Well, I think that mid-October to like that first week of November, once you get after the first week of November.
Yep.
you're losing everybody. Or everyone's racing to schedule everything. So Do you guys know more of like the town calendars that things are happening? That you can find when things aren't happening?
Well, town
So we
meeting
find
is the-
openings?
town meeting is October 23rd.
23.
Okay.
So that,
So we don't want to
that
conflict
might,
with that.
I'm sorry, we might, if we have something to hand out there for the moderators. approval.
That's a good idea.
Or do you think actually, is there anything that is on October 23rd that actually would be helpful to have this workshop before that to kind of just be informed about a process? Or I don't know what-
I haven't
what's on the
seen the warrant. Rosie, is there
well, it's
anything?
probably not out.
Nothing, no, not yet, not yet. It's not finalized yet. We really haven't
Well, I guess maybe
nailed it down.
does it, I mean, seems like the sooner we can pick a date, the better.
2 weeks before town meeting, is that what people are thinking? Sometime,
Leading up to.
yeah, maybe the week before.
We don't get great attendance at town meeting, especially. Are there any big issues for this town meeting?
No.
So we're not gonna get a lot of people.
Well, just, it's an event.
I mean,
and-
there's two different things. Like if we had our event before town meeting, it's an opportunity.
Right? That would be good. That would be
True, true.
You know, I wanna keep that people that are that's an opportunity. You know what, also, you know, probably not super, but
Controversial.
come to their own meeting.
And the advantage, it will be a shorter meeting, so that people won't feel like they're a captive audience for.
Well, and it's
half the
open
day.
town meeting, so if you live in Hamilton and you walk in the door for the master plan, you are the legislative body. It's your.
That's exactly
There you
right.
go.
Well, it is, you know, it is about civic participation. And, do you know if the school system does, in some places they do backpack flyers, like if, like you can, the kids get stuff to take home? Okay. 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 That would be great. Yeah. Sometimes paper is better. Well, if you could investigate that, and I know Kristen, I'm directing the conversation to the other Kristen, had mentioned something about getting kids involved in civic participation, and I don't know that we can nail that down quite yet, but it would be great to get kids involved.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'm, shockingly so, for civic.
Mhm.
And in the spring, I was feeling so I don't know how that.
Yeah.
No, but it's just still by the spring, we'll be actually in a really good place. to-
Yeah.
We won't be done, but we'll be like in a good place with information.
Right.
What is it? I've never even heard of it.
Oh, so it's a town basically you have to partner a student with an adult. It's a team of 4, but you have to have at least one student and one adult, so you could have any combination that you have to. And then it's like a spelling bee, it's a civics bee, there's civics questions, and it's a competition.
It's
and
where all the
trivia
8th
kind of-
graders come in
Yeah.
and embarrass the heck out of adults because
Yeah.
they're so smart. okay?
It's fun.
They answer all the questions and they get them so fast. The kids loved it and I loved it. It was so much fun. Of course, we were beaten badly. This time.
Yeah.
The League of Women Voters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
That was good. Yeah. All right, so I will ask when school's putting.
Okay.
flyers about
That would be
and,
great.
And I will also just ask about flyers as well. I know you're pushing for paper, but Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah, we're in a lot of transition right now. So, but, yeah,
Well, and you might not really know until school starts.
Like, and maybe when you get a superintendent.
So for that week of, like, so if it's October 23rd, for that like week or two before, if we're gonna try, can you guys, Patrick and Dana, look at school and town, like who meets on what night, and like try to reduce the conflict of what day, and then maybe
yeah, we can.
Send out
I guess
some dates.
I'm sort of a proponent sometimes of just
doing it.
like saying, well, why don't we? I mean, I'm willing to do that. I'm also sort of, there's a part of me that's like, well, let's us take the lead in August right now. We put it on the calendar. We're sort of saying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, not a Monday night, not a
No.
Tuesday night,
well,
and not a Wednesday night.
well, and we're gonna put, I mean, there's always something.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right, I mean, and then the school committee. So there you go. But.
So just pick it.
So
Pick a date.
that's what I'm saying, is that like at some point, it's kind of like,
Yeah, okay.
you know.
Could we do a Friday night, or is that?
No, forget Friday
Oh
night.
my
won't be there.
God, okay.
Ain't gonna work.
I mean, I would,
What about a Saturday afternoon?
No, let the schools take the lead and people, people can like, because even, I understand that the board of selectmen is the most
No,
important
she-
thing, but.
Dana was saying
people
we
can
should take
support
the
that.
lead.
I was not saying that at all. I was not saying that.
You want the
Yeah.
community to
Well,
take. the lead.
Saturday, it's all school sports. We're not gonna have
In the
people on
morning,
Saturday.
but maybe in the afternoon.
Weekends are
Soccer and
sacrosanct.
football.
I don't want to.
So
No, I can think of all the time, but,
maybe send out a doodle poll.
yeah. Let's think about this and
I don't
let's
think
think
we're
about
gonna
it.
put it down at this moment.
Yeah, I was just looking to see if I had anything on my calendar, but that's a good idea.
I can't do the 20th.
Okay.
Are we, and are you thinking of an evening?
I'm open. I can tell you, and I know a lot of people do think of this as kind of some- and if we're going hybrid, that requires a little bit of thought. Because then we're stuck in a room. If we're doing a workshop, if there was an outdoor venue, I don't know, just think about that. It's not the same place.
We've done workshops at the Bucher School. And that's when, and maybe we would do it
Well,
at
the library
Winthrop.
has a great.
Yeah. Well, the Winthrop cafeteria is even bigger. If you're thinking about distance. Yeah, so maybe the Winthrop.
Because there's definitely no AV. Is there AV in the library?
Mhm.
Did you?
But it's a much smaller room,
Right,
so
right.
that's all I was thinking of.
True.
Okay, well,
Let's
let's
make-
try and pin that down. And just in terms of this committee, and I had said this, and I just want to be right at the point. Our next meeting, is, well, your next meeting is us. You have a meeting for August 26th amongst yourself, I believe. September 9th would be your Weston Sampson meeting. I can't, unfortunately, I had a meeting with Wyndham, planning board that night. But I also recommend that we do a couple meetings or a longer meeting to really kind of nail down more if we can in September. In September and October, I really think we need to dig deep and get some work.
So you're
Done.
saying September 9th is not going to work for you?
No.
So we should change that.
Or is the timing not, I mean, if you're gonna meet with
True.
can you meet with us?
Earlier.
Yeah, I don't.
It's good to bring them a little closer together because people, we get a little rhythm going.
What time?
Well, if you're here anyway, I'm just.
Planning board is at
Yeah.
7.
So we
Um,
do that, so.
5.
Right,
What day of the week is that?
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, you're thinking until 7.
Well, there's, I mean, I guess if I'm here physically with you.
Oh, I just assumed.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know.
No, it's,
Up to you guys.
via Zoom.
But I would think about another couple of meetings. We don't have to decide this now, but
We should get the second one.
I think we said.
instead of the 9th? Is that
Or
what
if
you're
she's saying we want extra meeting.
Yeah,
do the
but I was
second,
thinking,
I mean, if they don't not go.
I was thinking after.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the 9th, so the 9th, so maybe you can do 5 o'clock, so we just need to check with the city committee members if they can do that.
Can you guys look at your calendar for September 9th?
Yeah.
But I will.
September 9th. looks good to me.
Yeah, well, that's not first week of school, so I might be on Zoom.
It's your first week.
I know, that's all. She's going to be crying.
No, you're not. Kindergarten.
Oh, I can still remember crying when my son went to
I
kindergarten.
know. I was trying to be positive.
We positively know she's going to be crying.
So those 5 p.m. work, so we'll reach out to because we're missing. And then, so let's go back to, so
The
for
23rd?
Weston and Sampson,
September 23rd, that's 2 weeks
I
later.
already
Yeah.
have it on the 23rd.
well, that
September
would have been our meeting, but
Oh,
now I'll make it a Weston and
Got it.
Sampson.
Oh, got it.
9:23.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Are we
Because we
thinking
were already
6
meeting anyway.
o'clock again?
Yes,
That would be great.
6 o'clock is definitely. I could do 5 to just try.
Maybe just that on the 9th, we would do 5 o'clock to accommodate your schedule and then do 6 on the 23rd. So I think I'm in court that day and God only knows where I'll be. So it'll take a couple of hours to
All right,
drive
so we're
down.
saying this, I'm sorry, 6 o'clock on the 23rd.
Yeah.
These are not.
Can you all do 6 o'clock? on the-
Yes, on the 23rd, 6 o'clock. On the 9th, did you say 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock?
Yeah, we're gonna.
5.
For 5.
Okay.
It's all coming back on minutes, so. some kind of minute.
I noticed you weren't writing anything down, so.
Oh, I can't.
So
Oh.
September
It
9th.
just-
Oh,
You have extra
Such a
pens,
loser.
sir.
Would you like?
No, then he'd have to be
No, 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 no.
responsible.
No, I'm gonna do whatever Chris tells me.
But not having a pen is
Until
no.
I have to.
okay.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
We have a meeting in August.
Yeah.
26th is your intro meeting.
The question is, so, okay, Jackie won't be here.
That can't be fair.
on the 26th,
I'll be available maybe by June, but
I might not be available.
I won't be available.
Should we,
So if we're not available on the, so we could think about canceling, but I think we should try to figure out how can we best get you information. So if we cancel, because usually we've been using these meetings just with us to kind of coordinate what we need to get to you guys, as well as to some structural organization. So if we cancel the 26th, I think we should at least make use of individually to answer some of your questions.
it'll be homework night.
Yeah.
Saying, yeah,
Like
Kind of.
once everything's on the Dropbox, just kind of really clear next steps about what items need to be reviewed, addressed. And a deadline. I'm very deadline oriented.
Well, that last week, I mean.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay.
And then we're kind of winding up. Eric, is there anything that you want to throw on to this while we get you in? You can- Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
So, Eric, since you're,
also,
no.
I just wanted to make sure, Patrick, that you can facilitate our meeting with Alex, our finance director. Might be helpful.
You want John and Bill with that too?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just meaning on
Mhm.
that too.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just gonna ask Eric a question since it's so nice to have you here. And been listening to us as well. But no, I was just curious, just in terms of kind of, we've talked about kind of data gathering with Carolyn, and I know you'll resume. You talked a little bit about it, but just kind of your process in data gathering and what you're kind of what you're looking at to put this the economic piece together, and just I don't know, just kind of talk a little bit about it, because I think as this group we're just kind of a little bit like, how can we best help that? And there's so much energy for, we need to figure out this economic thing, and I just want to figure out how what you're doing and what we're doing and how those intersect. I guess it's kind of what we want to understand a little bit more. Either or. I mean, I think I'm just talking about kind of the economic development drivers and just what drives revenue and development, just kind of the picture of what you're looking at, the data you're looking at to get there, and just not necessarily exactly what's in the chapter, but just kind of how you're coming at this. Just kind of what I'm thinking about.
Okay. So you're right, the development, whether it's commercial or non-commercial development, you can help and drive the financial decision. As well as to the path perspective. Services and tools and infrastructure. So they're all kind of like the land use chapter, the economic development, housing, and really the housing chapter as well. And this sort of add-on fiscal financial component is they're all tied together, and honestly, probably open space and natural resource and conservation, because of what you already have under restriction and what you may be thinking about, down the line, or things you may want to consider. So I think the nice thing I like about master plans is it gives everybody a chance to come up high, look at everything together. Like I like to call it, it's really like systems thinking in many ways, where you have the opportunity to look at 10 or 12 different chapters, or I forget how many there are, say there's 10 in this case. Yeah, multiple in this case. And be able to see where all those touch points are, but more importantly, the linkages between the two, because if you're someone who lives in Hamilton and you work in a completely different arena than the folks who are around this table, or certainly us, you probably don't. You might think about schools, you might think about the park, you might think about the business you love to go to in downtown, but you don't necessarily think about how everything links together. So in terms of the master plan, that's why I like working on these things, because you really get to rise above and think about everything, and then direct people to come back down in the weeds after we're gone and address the actions that we're going to lay out in the plan. So from the economic development and the financial piece, they really do go hand in hand, as we've been talking about. Where are the places where people might be more acceptive of development, or different types of development. Then on the fiscal financial side, we want to understand the level or intensity of development that might be acceptable, and then tell people, well, if you allow X, Y, and Z to redevelop into something else, here's what the financial implications of that decision, or that zoning change, or that that friendly 40B, or adopting a 40R district, or whatever the decisions are. Here are the financial or fiscal implications of those decisions. Both on the infrastructure side, which would be working obviously closely with Caroline and her team on, and then also on the financial side, which is the discussions that we're going to be engaging on the town. So that's the linkage that I see between the two, and those are the conversations I hope will happen throughout the master plan process. And also what we were talking about before, the education, the talking points, like me, I think that stuff needs to be part of those in some way, whether it's direct or indirect, some way to tell the day-to-day people, the residents of Hamilton, like, hey, look, when we make a zoning decision, or when we make a school funding decision or infrastructure decision, it means we're doing this and we're probably not doing something else. Maybe now we can't actually do something else. So the master plan then becomes about priorities and trade-offs as well, because as we know, we don't have the capacity, finances, and resources to do everything. So I think a lot of our job is, as Caroline mentioned, we need to dig into the data. We need to understand what's happening. Then we need to be able to communicate that to the public and say, well, here's what is happening. and then use that process to then educate and then ask questions and get feedback, talk about the trade-offs. What are the goals? What are we trying to achieve? What are the financial implications of that? Which in this master plan is a bit unique than other ones I've worked on. A lot of times the financial aspect is the dollar, like how many dollar signs is something going to cost. But here we're going to actually try to, put some real numbers to things, talk about those trade-offs in real dollars and cents with people. So I think it'll be an interesting process. On the data side, just for the economic development, and I think I talked about this on the last meeting. We have to do that chapter. What that chapter looks like, I think, is flexible because Massachusetts state statute for what a master plan has to include and how you do it is actually quite a bit looser than many of our surrounding states. Many of our surrounding states have state approval. Rhode Island, Maine, maybe even, I don't know if New Hampshire has it or not. Connecticut has it. So here we have more flexibility. So I think some of that is showing up in the outline that I think you all sent around, which I think is a really nice way of kind of looking at things. Maybe there's quick existing conditions chapters, but we're spending a little bit more time on the themes. Maybe one of those themes is nodes of development or areas of focus or whatever we want to call it. And we start to actually have meetings with the public to say, well, if we did look at the MBTA station, there's this new directive from the state saying every community that has a station within a half mile, you've got to do X, Y, and Z with your zoning. So maybe there's real conversations or deeper conversations with the community about those kinds of topic-based issues. And then we can link that to the financial side and try to talk about what are the implications of your decisions. So I don't know, that's the way I see a lot of these things fitting together. So while I think, Jack, you're right, it is operating at a bit higher level than what the FinCom or the CapCom probably operates at. Everything is intertwined. So as much work as we can do to talk about how the systems are connected, and then let the FinCom, CapCom, and the board, the select board, and others figure out what they're actually going to do. I think that would be a successful outcome of the plan.
Part of it's high-end residential, which is going to be minimal. But I think, the big questions in town are with the school site, which is smart growth and right near the train station, easy walking distance, 9 acres. We don't need 3 elementary schools. We have 3 elementary schools, and the boss here is going to be right in the middle of this thing. But we have had a couple of superintendents who have said we do not need 3 elementary sites. And so I would assume if in fact it goes that way, and I don't know if it's going to go that way or not, but if it goes to Cutler, 1 elementary school in Hamilton, 1 elementary school, Euchre in Wenham, Winthrop becomes redundant. And Winthrop is an expensive appendage of the regional because it's got the whole administration to it, and it's a major cost factor right now. So that's 9 acres that could be right there in town that could be really first class, and I would hope would be majorly, that's not a word, and to a major extent done commercially, but I think could have some housing integrated in upper floors and things like that. I don't know how it's going to go. We'd have to get a good developer that kind of did that. The other big question, I believe Gordon Conwell is on a negative cash flow, and they have already declared their model, their teaching model is no longer viable, that they're going to virtual, and that their dormitories, which we allowed them to build many years ago, which was a huge mistake in my mind. But anyway, they've been off the tax rolls for a long time. It looks like they're going to get rid of the dormitories in any event. Those are going to need some work. They've talked about 2 of the 8 or whatever they are. There's about 180 or 200 units of housing there. So, could be at different levels of, could be affordable. What we want to do at the end is have the whole thing count against our affordable, because we need about 200 units of affordable to get to 10% and get this elephant off our backs. And then the question is the top of the hill. That is their headquarters right now, but they've got 3 other campuses, and who knows? I mean, we have had a negotiation going on with them for some time. I'm not sure how hard we pushed it. I'm not privy to that information, so I'm operating from something that is less than perfect. But I think if we really start to push this thing, and there are people in town who think that we've been subsidizing them with schools at the rate of about $800,000 a year. So they have a lot of big old brick buildings that are up there that I know one customer, one potential developer said would be expensive to knock down, but we're in a whole different market now. And who knows what this decentralization of economics is going to go to. And it's a perfectly beautiful site on the top of the hill. Our reservoir is up there, our single reservoir, our water system for the whole town. And if we could negotiate a deal with them where they could retrench that property and get it back on the tax rolls, probably subdivided with the dormitories in one section and the rest of it in the other section. It's a critical place. And if we don't want it filling up with a whole lot of little houses. I mean, this is my prejudices coming out.
Well, but that's where we talk about land use, and it's
Yeah.
kind of a whole campus. There can be a lot of different opportunities
Right.
for land use, and kind of even if really interesting commercial projects that
Hopefully it takes over the whole top of the hill.
that might, be really high revenue producer, but.
And
instead
we're
of a whole
thinking
bunch of
biolab.
family.
Biolab's right down the street. It throws $1 million to Ipswich every year. The sun is out there on 128. It sells signaling. This seems to be a booming industry here, and I don't know what the potential is. And the only other possibility that I really like for high-end condos would be over in our old dump, which is a hop, skip, and a jump from 128. And behind all those photovoltaic panels, there's some perfectly beautiful high land that looks out across the Manchester, Essex wilderness. And a nice high-end 3 or 4 story development out there with some tennis courts and things for people who work along with, much like they have in Bedford and Burlington and places like that. Easy commute, could be really high-end condos or something. That could be a generator.
Yeah, so, and you probably think the same thing I'm thinking, but maybe like a focus session with this group, thinking about opportunity sites is something you want to think of, not necessarily with the general public, at least at this point.
Oh, yeah. What?
Well, yeah.
That's what I'm
When Eric was talking, I was thinking that when we were interviewing for this job, one of the things we brought up was the idea of working with the public. Because one of the ideas was to educate the public on the nature of government and the nature, because a lot of people really don't know how government works in terms of its budgeting. And one of the ways you can educate the public in that sense is to do a participatory budgeting exercise, where they have to think about their priorities, but they only have a certain amount of money. You can actually do this online. You can do it through the Social Pinpoint website and create games essentially, but it's a game that teaches people how local government works. We can also do it in
War
person.
games.
Yeah, right. Nuclear war, whatever it is. But in this case, it'll be development. But a focus session of people who understand development and where are the opportunities to explore development sites might be a discussion that we will need to schedule. Like I'm thinking like a SWOT, like what are the strengths and weaknesses of potential areas?
But I think, to your point, I think we need to understand what are kind of the open space areas, what are the levels of protection,
Right.
at least that we know, so we can be informed. And then even ask, as you guys were talking about, DPW and people, like, they might know, okay, yeah, you want to do that, but there's a 2-inch pipe for all of that whole area, or it's held together by duct tape and it's like, okay, so that's fine, but like,
what's it going to cost?
you gotta think about these things. So, I think at that point, once we generate some of those ideas, is a good time to kind of talk to, because some people, what do you want to do in Berlin? They're like, I don't know but if you say, what if we do this here? They're like, oh, we can't do that there because of this. It's just
right,
because it's something to hold on to. When you ask these kind of broad questions, sometimes people just don't think that way.
Yeah, I agree. And also the master plan is to think big. Like we don't want to negate opportunities because everything's a cost and benefit analysis that needs to be done at a later point. But at least, we're fleshing out, the high level opportunities through the plan.
I was just going to say, just there is a different mindset about what could be done with that land out there, commercial. So, one of my colleagues is very focused on doing commercial development up there because it's not,
Up on,
Out on
Glen
Tobacco.
Conlon.
no, tobacco.
Oh,
Yeah, just because it's a nice piece of land, it'll be a zip to go to 128. So it's interesting that people have different ideas about what to use it.
hey,
Use it for.
it's
Yeah,
finding the right developer
Yeah.
that fits.
yeah. So
I'm
it
just
is
throwing your
interesting.
ideas. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm gonna go to that.
So much of that land there is effectively habitat.
Salamander.
Oh,
But they used to cover the whole top of the dump and then suddenly they retreated.
no,
Look at that.
like it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm talking vertical.
Didn't you guys just close it 12 years ago?
The land itself is, most of it is under the solar farm. Portion
Oh,
of it is not, and that took the.
but was that
Outside of
under,
that, there's some additional land area, but the vast majority of it is wet. There's natural heritage habitat, endangered species habitat, floodplain.
moving on to Gordon Cromwell.
So,
But this particular area, you know, I'm talking about is high and ledgy. And, you know, you could build a 50-story building up there. I'm not suggesting that's a good idea. I did, Patrick, I drove through there yesterday and I was surprised to see cell number 2 has not been touched. And it probably was not a great place to put more panels, but, and building there, of course, with big pilings and all kinds of stuff. But,
Okay, I'm gonna reel you in now.
Okay, really, that's
Because we
okay.
have 10 minutes.
That's okay. I don't know, that's fine.
And we've got one last item on the agenda, which is the draft outline. And Emil Dahlquist very kindly fleshed out the working outline that we already had. And I just wanted to make sure that, you know, as you get a look, if there's anything that doesn't work for you, but it's a pretty solid and traditional. It's sort of traditional and sort of not. And that's you know, nice. The way it's organized.
It's a good checklist.
I like it.
And there are a couple things I saw in there that were not necessarily applicable, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Well, and I guess if you're good with this, I mean, I'm being a little self-serving in that we are, as we build our data, it really helps to kind of line it toward a particular structure, you know, and so, you know, I guess I would like us to commit to a structure so that we can, yeah. And I think this looks good. And what I would probably also think about is in our Dropbox, kind of organizing files so that as we start developing data, we can drop them in the folders, and I'll give you a heads up that, you know, we put, you know, a draft out. Like, for example, on the introduction, Sydney did a demographic and a history. It's not really a draft yet, but it's something that I can drop in the box, and you guys can start to look at it and add to it or edit or make comments. Oh yeah, doing a master plan is a lot of work. No joke.
I think it looks good. The only comments I would have is on utility infrastructure. Oh, I have 2 comments. One on utility infrastructure, kind of just in general, just like interconnectivity of things, not just like, I mean, this is kind of old school, just to say wireless cellular. It's like there's more to kind of interconnectivity of wire, like the environment.
Physical, yes.
Just kind of the IoT of everything. And then my second comment, and you guys can disagree with me, but I think it's important to think about in residential development, also aging senior care and memory care and kind of just, I don't know, I feel like every
There's a lot of
community.
those around.
But I think, you know, they're in these big scale things that I think communities should be embracing in a smaller scale.
Yeah, I
Aging
agree,
senior care
yeah.
because a lot of people have their family members and they don't want to, if they're not in their house or they can't. I don't know. I you know, personally just feel kind of strongly about that particular piece. You guys can definitely disagree with me, but I just think it's a piece of the population that we often
forget, but often for those of us who are dealing with that sandwich generation, it's the hardest thing to deal with.
Yep.
And to have things near us, and I'm saying 200 unit like assisted living, it's just even
Well,
smaller.
and
scale.
also, I mean, putting it on. Look at it. It doesn't mean that we're gonna, like, it could be that we do work and we determine that for some reason that there's, that, right, that Hamilton does not need that, and we, you know, like, we could.
It's also like if you saw like AARP does this little study thing, and it's really, there's some great standards out there for aging friendly. And it's really just good practices for it.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what you were talking about, aging in place, I also have sort of this vision that there's some pretty nice, bigger old houses in the downtown area. And what if one of those houses were taken and rehabbed to be sort of, you know, little suites, and then there's a central meeting, a common area. And that's sort of a mini sort of
Yeah.
assisted living place.
Well,
And
semi-independent.
exactly. But I like that idea a lot. And in fact, I'm the liaison to the Council on Aging, and that's one of the things that seniors talk about. And I think that we should definitely talk more about that.
Isn't the market going towards more aging in place than going off to?
Right, but taxes might
But some
not
people
make that
can't age.
feasible.
Some people can't live in place, so it's what happens.
For the number of
Right.
services that they need.
I just think we should add that as a.
No, I agree. I mean,
That's
my
all.
mom is, it's a very, like, the cost of assisted living
Right.
is criminal.
It's
And
scary,
yeah. And so we need to think about, you know, regular middle-class people and how they age. So,
Right, well, and my mom was at Seasons of Danvers, and it's like 43 units. And it's all memory care, but it was the best thing that I've ever experienced in the time in my life that I needed help.
Mhm.
And it was small scale and it wasn't huge. And it's
Yeah.
the kind of thing that why aren't we as communities embracing things like this to help people get back to their own lives and
Yeah.
take care of our elders, you know,
yeah.
for not the $14,000 a month of assisted living. Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane.
You know, there are a lot of big old houses around here that could be used for that kind of thing.
Smaller
The problem
scale.
is our bylaw was set up entirely wrong. And it's something that probably.
So let's talk about it. That's all I'm
That's what
saying.
master plan does. It says you're gonna look at your bylaw and amend it to make it
But
more.
you can't prohibit
Yeah.
assisted living.
Oh, no, I'm not,
No, I'm saying that our bylaw does say that now. Yeah.
no, the big problem I think is that it says you can develop the big old house, but then you can't do anything else for a year until you get a double mobilized for anything you want to do with the big old estate, if one came on the market. I don't know any that are coming on the market.
Oh, Brackenside.
Well, Brackenside's a possibility.
Is that the big one on
The old
Bridge?
Clark
Bridge
estate.
Street.
And that's.
Someone told me they went to a wedding there like 20 years ago.
Went to a horse show there. The United States Equestrian team was there.
Used to be there.
Anyhow,
Oh,
Caroline,
really?
sorry.
No, we're
Yeah,
good.
oh,
You
yeah.
can talk all you want. I mean, I have nothing else, and, you know, we just have to adjourn, so. That's it.
So we entertain a motion.
Are we all set? So we did the next meetings.
Yeah, and I'll try and,
Can I vote that I would like us to maybe not have a meeting on the 26th and do our homework then.
Right.
So you give us, if you can give us some, or if Eric, you're looking for some data. So 9/23, 9/9 and 9/23.
Yep.
Are our next two meetings.
Yeah, but you'll get a heads up. either way. Yes, and I think, you know, as Lauren mentioned, that, you know, maybe we should put a deadline. on things too.
Yeah.
That does
And then
Thanks, Lauren.
you'll send a doodle poll out
help.
for the,
That's for the October, right? October.
for the,
Yeah.
whatever. And we need to definitely figure out like AV and where we're gonna go, who has, like, if it's gonna be Zoom or in person or. who knows what's going on.
Yeah.
We can discuss it later. I'm almost thinking it might be ideal in October. I don't want to make extra work, but as soon as I just planned and do separate things in the room. Having an outdoor in the room or something, and then if we had to grab the in person, at least we would have the tomorrow. Because hybrid is challenging.
It is, and it's never ideal.
So if you had the two things happen, that would be fantastic.
Sure. And there may be some benefits to having them both too. You might capture a couple different audiences.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I only have one. You have two different ones?
There's one there.
Lauren, I can drop one off at your house. I don't know where you.
Sure, yeah, if you already have them printed, then that's great. Otherwise, I'm happy to just use the PDF. It's fine.
What's your address?
I'm at 62 Willow Street.
Oh, yeah.
I'm right downtown, yeah.
Eric, when we adjourn, can you
I don't want no questions. Howard, right?
I don't know. Okay. What is this? Oh,
I know she doesn't
We
look
have to
hard.
address the sense of the-
Ooh.
right in the middle.
Well, I gave you that, but
Yeah.
if you want me to make something else.
I thought I understood you.
Okay, I'll keep your address anyway. They don't need it there.
Right.
Motion.
Motion
We got a mo- we got a motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Very efficient meeting. Thank you.
Got a lot of work to do.
Bye.
Bye.
You got a minute.